Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto this week, President Trump continues to shake up the world, and cannabis is no different, now calling for the death penalty for all drug dealers. And his cuts to federal government threaten over 500 existing research studies. MSO giant Green Thumb Industries CEO Ben Kovler lashes out at the DEA, calling that agency corrupt and asleep at the wheel. And now GTI is getting into the Delta 8 hemp business. On the state front, democracy and cannabis reform take a beating in Ohio this week as lawmakers move to undo what the people voted in just a few months ago. And even in California, lawmakers there are moving to ban all disposable vapes for cannabis and nicotine products, citing lithium battery dangers and environmental impact. And Pennsylvania Senior Senator John Fetterman is starting a petition to federally legalize cannabis that you can sign right now. Plus, a report from the American Dental Association sees an association between cavities and cannabis. Oops, that reminds me, time to go brush my teeth. All that and international cannabis reports on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News, PCMTV's weekly production of cannabis news here in the United States, Europe, and Canada. I'm Alaina Pinto. Now that we are releasing the show on Mondays at 9 a.m., you can watch the live stream on 7 social media platforms simultaneously, or you can get that live stream right on the PCMTV app available at the App Store and on Google Play. Scan the QR code, and that will take you right there. We start with a confusing environment in our nation's capital where cannabis reform just isn't a priority for the ruling Republican Party. This week was even more bizarre after President Trump's meeting with the Ukraine President Zelensky that ended abruptly after the two had a rather volatile exchange in the Oval Office. One thing's for sure, the two leaders certainly did not talk about cannabis reform. In fact, the only time President Trump mentioned anything having to do with drug reform is when he mentioned that he thinks drug dealers should get the death penalty. He did not specify if he considered cannabis dealers a drug dealer in that sentence. The president also announced that Alice Johnson, a formerly incarcerated woman serving a 20-year sentence on a non-violent cannabis conviction, will become the nation's pardon czar. Her responsibility will be to recommend to the president other current inmates who are still serving sentences for non-violent cannabis crimes. The only positive news coming out of the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. comes from the newly formed U.S. Cannabis Roundtable, whose leaders are clinging to hope that President Trump will make good on his campaign promises after supporting adult use in his home state of Florida. In the meantime, NORML is lashing out at legal states like Ohio, who are trying to change the existing adult use laws by a strong Republican Senate there. And the reforms that were passed this week include removing the Social Equity Jobs Program, cutting back on home grow from 12 plants to 6, and capping THC percentage and creating a mandatory 3-day jail sentence for anyone caught riding in a vehicle while consuming cannabis. Big note on that, though, it's just if you are riding in a vehicle, not driving it. There are a few other items in this bill that now goes to the House of Representatives in Ohio. And you know, our Ohio correspondent, Christina Brisson, will have something to say about this in her weekly report, sponsored by Yellow Labs Tincture, now in 40 dispensaries in that state.
Around Columbus, Sophia is a beacon of sensuality who embraces her sensuality and desires. Seeking to enhance intimacy, she tries Yellow Labs TDHC Libido Mist. The mist ignites passion, awakening desires, and fostering authentic connections. Empowered by its effects, she embarks on a journey of exploration and intimacy. THC Libido Mist serves as a catalyst, kindling desire and intimacy.
Hi, I'm Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations with your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report with Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm going to start off with a piece of positive news before I go on my next rant. They're opening a new dispensary in Niles, Ohio, which is going to be recreational as well as medical, so congratulations for that. But let's move on to the rest of the story that's taking over all the news in Ohio this week. And let's be honest, all of us voters are pretty pissed. SB 56 passed through the Senate, which changes everything about our laws with THC and cannabis and how it's going to be handled, the taxation, where the money goes, what the percentages are, what we're allowed to grow, and more. There's a lot of changes that no one wanted in this. And Ohio took the time to vote cannabis in when we were ready for the right measures. We had opportunities before and we did not like how it was laid out. And now we finally have things the way we wanted, and they're saying, no, we're going to change every last bit of it. So it has to go through the House and it's got to go through the governor, but we all know Governor Mike DeWine supports this bill. Let's hope this dies in the House. Everybody speak up, reach out. This is not okay. This is a complete screw you to us voters, and it needs to change, and something needs to happen. That is your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report, and I am Christina Brisson with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The Ohio Cannabis Report is supported by Yellow Labs and BetterWays to THC.com. Search for Yellow Labs near me and find one of 40 dispensaries in Ohio carrying these amazing mists and creams. We're so lucky to have Tim Johnson from Ohio joining us here at the Cannabis Coast to Coast production studio. And I can ask him, what happened in Ohio this week? You were in the room when the Republicans voted all this weird stuff into a new bill. They've undone everything that Ohio gained. What is your reaction to what happened there, Tim?
For Ohioans, it was nothing unexpected. We knew it was coming. As we've been following issue 2 since it's passed, and we've watched what happened, and we've been receiving somewhat, I guess, legislative respect and following the timeline. But last week on the Senate floor, in addressing Senate Bill 56, what we seen was Ohio Senate Bill 56. It presented a new era of cannabis prohibition in Ohio, is the simplest way to put, or to reply to the bill's language.
Are you confident that the House is going to come up with a counter bill or just block this one?
No, they're going to come up. I really believe they'll come up with a counter bill, one of their own. They don't want to take something that's so pejorative in the minds of Ohioans, and say, okay, well, we're just going to make a couple adjustments on Senate Bill 56 and it'll pass the Senate Bill 56. I don't think it's going to happen. We've got too many calls to actions right now, too many people calling for their resignation, advising them, elections are around the corner. It's just gotten to a point that's ridiculous to, speak of the voters that put you in office, to basically call us stupid and call us dumb. We don't know what we're doing, and so forth. So no, I truly believe with the contacts I have and my intel that the House will come up with something much better, and they'll get rid of a lot of the criminal enhancement of criminal penalties and laws that they're adding into. Much of them date back to worse than the current illicit drug laws in Ohio.
Well, Tim Johnson, as always, thank you so much. We now go back to Alaina Pinto in the studio.
Don't look now, but the legal regulated cannabis industry is moving towards the more unregulated hemp industry and getting into infused beverages and other hemp-based products because it's a lot easier to operate in that market. It's kind of like if you can't beat them, join them. Well, that's what's going on with one of the larger multi-state operators in the U.S., Green Thumb Industries out of Illinois. This week, their CEO, Ben Culver, ripped the DEA for their delaying practices and called them clueless and asleep at the wheel. In their fourth quarter earnings call with investors, Kovler painted a very bleak picture on future federal reform of cannabis, including the fact that he doesn't see legalization happening for at least a decade. Kovler's quote during that call was, "We think the DEA is corrupt and misguided and out to lunch," unquote. GTI has a strong reputation in the industry as one of the few publicly traded MSOs that has a solid financial model. Their preemptive move into the hemp-derived industry is another sign that GTI is ready to adapt to the new, more prohibitionist administration in Washington, D.C. Our Illinois reporter, Mark Allen, is already preparing for this move in his own backyard. Here's the Chicago Clone Guys report for the week.
What's up, everybody? This is Mark Allen, the Chicago clone guy, checking in from Illinois for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, and this is Bird in his spot like always. Thanks for tuning in. As you all know, as we all know watching this show, that the MSOs, or for the people that don't wear suits every day, multi-state organization, MSO, the big companies is what I like to call them, they've pretty much, they dominate the cannabis industry, and especially they're starting to take over the hemp industry for the intoxicated hemp. Well, not for long. Small guys are starting to do it too. This guy. I currently have, as you're going to see a video coming up here, I have agriculturally zoned land, which is required for a hemp permit in Illinois now. They changed the tax code, so they're making the barriers to entry more difficult. But I knew that, so I anticipated that. I bought the property, and now, as you see in this video, I have a commercial facility being built on a multi-acreage field for our commercial hemp, clone producing facility. And we're also going to be doing outdoor intoxicated hemp, working possibly, with the MSOs or the small people. So it's not always the big guys out there. There's the small guys like me in the clone camper that are fighting for it every day too. But, I wish everybody luck in this business. So that's pretty cool seeing going on there. Illinois, some more news in Illinois. An Illinois committee advances a bill to eliminate the search of a vehicle alone by the smell or odor of burnt or raw cannabis. That's pretty good information. I like hearing that going through. The East Dundee Police Department are having some bad news because they recently raided a hemp shop and they had to give it all back, including the money that they took. And now the owner of that hemp shop is suing them for an illegal raid. Imagine that. They're alleging that it was based on race, and they also allege that the East Dundee Police Department knew that other local shops were doing the same thing they were doing in the same area, but left them alone because they were not the same race. But those are alleged statements. But that sums up this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Mark Allen, the Chicago clone guy. Checking out. Thanks for tuning in.
California continues to drive more revenue in cannabis sales than any other state, yet the industry is struggling because of overregulation and another elected body that continues to make it as difficult as possible to survive in the industry. And now, a state assemblywoman is introducing a bill that would effectively ban all vaping tools for cannabis and nicotine. Assemblymember Jackie Irwin has introduced a bill that would ban single-use cannabis and nicotine vapes statewide. The reason has to do with public safety, claiming the lithium batteries in those devices are prone to spontaneous combustion. On top of that, she cites the impact of these devices on the environment. On top of that movement is the decline in tax revenue and the desire of the California state government to increase already existing taxes up to 25%. Industry lobbyists believe that if this happens, even more cannabis businesses will fail and consumers will return to the illicit market. California joins other legal adult use states who want to inflict and increase taxes to make up for budget shortfalls. Our California reporter managed to find a safe haven for cannabis enthusiasts. It was a Cannabis Chamber of Commerce event in West Hollywood at Pleasure Med. Here's Dina Naguib.
Hi, I'm Dina Naguib, Principal Consultant of Grass Goddess Consulting, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Special report today. I'm here with Ian Rassman of Rassman Payments. How's it going, Ian?
It's great. It's awesome to be here today. Here we are hanging out in a lounge, Cannabis Lounge in West Hollywood.
Yeah, we're at Pleasure Med today. Do you want to tell everyone what we're doing here?
We're here with the LA County Bar Association and Cannabis Chamber of Commerce to come together and discuss the plant. Here at Pleasure Med in West Hollywood, a cannabis consumption lounge. And we've had a lot of amazing products here today. Really some fantastic stuff.
It's an amazing group of people. Like, there are a lot of attorneys here, but a lot of other people. It's really been great. And West Hollywood has really been leading the way when it comes to consumption lounges for cannabis. So I think that it's great that we were able to come here together today and talk about the future.
Absolutely. West Hollywood is definitely leading cannabis tourism. It's sort of the new Amsterdam, with people coming internationally to LA, knowing that they can go to lounges and purchase cannabis and consume it, all in a safe environment. This is amazing.
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely a great place, and tourists already come here. So
we need to see the expansion of this model and others outside of West Hollywood, more pervasive around California and other parts of the country and around the world, of course.
Absolutely, and that's a great lead-in because, Ian, I wanted to ask you have some big travel coming up. Do you want to just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I'm heading off to Europe on Wednesday. I'm visiting a cultivation facility in Holland on Thursday. I'm speaking at the Cannabis Summit on Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I'm grabbing all the executives from the summit, and I'm leading a 2-day industry tour around Amsterdam. We've got some VIP tours lined up at many of the famous coffee shops. The owners are going to meet us and give us the private tour. So we're going to get the VIP experience. We've got the Bulldog canal boat, so we're going to go cruising down the canals, and it's all a walking tour. And then it's Cannabis Week in Barcelona, so I'm leaving on Tuesday for Barcelona, where there's going to be sea days, events every night in lounges all around the city. Thursday is the International Cannabis Business Conference, another event I'm sponsoring. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday is Cannabis, the Europe's largest cannabis festival with 15,000 plus people pouring into Barcelona to celebrate the plant.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And we actually have one of our correspondents that lives over in Europe that will be at Cannabis. So it'd be cool if you guys meet up and do another interview there. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for taking a little time with me today. I appreciate everything you do for the industry.
It's always great hanging out with you, Dina.
Thanks so much. This is Dina for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
One more note on California. If you want to get your voice heard about the proposed tax hike, think about attending a lobby day on March 24th in the state's capital, Sacramento. That tax hike threatens the existence of the market that is teetering on collapse. So think about these unfair facts. Cannabis in California, the consumers there pay 124 times more than the tax on wine and 60 times more than beer. Seems a bit unfair, right? Well, that'll do it for the A Block, or first section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Next up, we'll turn it over to our international reports, Debbie Facey in Canada and Ben Stevens in London with a report on the ever-changing laws in Germany. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto. While we pride ourselves on our coverage of the industry from the East Coast here in Massachusetts to the West Coast, we are thrilled to have regular reports from the emerging market in Europe. We start with the Business of Cannabis editor, Ben Stevens.
I'm Ben Stevens with Business of Cannabis with this week's European Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Now, there's only one real story dominating the headlines this week, and that is the results of the German federal election. The CDU, as expected, won the most seats, and in their campaign they promised to repeal a lot of the cannabis reforms pushed through by the previous administration. While they won the most seats, they didn't have enough to form a government by themselves. This means that they will almost definitely have to form a coalition with one of the parties who created these reforms. The SPD is cited as the most likely contender to form a coalition, and in contrast they have promised not only to protect these reforms but to push for further liberalisation. So it's pretty unclear whether the CDU will have enough political capital to push through any of these repeals, and we probably won't get a full picture of what the new government looks like until around Easter. Now, the CDU has previously voiced its support for Germany's medical cannabis industry. This means that many assume any repeals will be focused more on the restrictive but existing recreational market in Germany. This has already sent ripple effects through the industry, seeing 2 businesses pull out. One company, a German business focused on selling cultivation equipment to Germany's cannabis cultivation associations, went into liquidation this week, while another US company hoping to do the same announced that it was pulling out of the market and focusing its efforts elsewhere. This all comes as the latest figures on Germany's booming medical cannabis market were released, showing that medical cannabis imports doubled in 2024 and grew by 53% in Q4 compared to Q3. While the medical cannabis market is considered much more safe from these repeals, the rapid growth that we've seen has already driven a lot of pushback from both the medical community and politicians. This week, one of the largest telehealth clinics in Germany was taken to court over accusations of malpractice and a kind of wider sense that the medical cannabis market is indeed a pseudo-recreational market. Depending on the results of this court case, this could have major implications for the exponentially growing medical cannabis market. That's all for this week from Business of Cannabis and the European Cannabis Report. I'm Ben Stevens, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
In Canada, that country is responsible for exporting 50% of its product to Germany, a country that continues to make changes to its cannabis laws. Here's Debbie Facey.
This is Debbie Facey with the Canadian Coast to Coast Cannabis News Report. So what we have in Canada this week is Canopy Growth brand Tweed has finally launched in Germany. This is something that has been a partnership with Portugal under the Grow Vida S.A. This is going to be something that's great for not only Germany, which is the largest market, but also it's going to be adding to the 83 million people that are not only within the consumer bracket, but are also influencers and are excited for this amazing change, which I am too. Next, what we have is New Zealand has received their first shipment from Pure Sun Farms, which is their Pink Kush, which is going under Village Farms International. And that is going to be something that is also great for Canada because now we have enhanced and grown our partnership within Europe and has become more known, especially due to the fact that our strains are at least something that we could stand back by and these brands can be proud of. This is it for Debbie Facey in Canada with the Canadian Coast to Coast Cannabis Report. Peace.
Last week, Matthew Friedlander was at the Washington State House lobbying for changes to some of the laws in one of the 2 oldest adult use states. It looks like those efforts got some notice. A bill to open up the home grow market has moved forward and is part of a bill that would allow public consumption of cannabis in a regulated licensed space. State Rep Melanie Morgan presented that to their state legislature and got immediate pushback from other reps who continue to be overly concerned about drivers who are under the influence of cannabis. The big question, of course, in every adult use state is confirming that a driver is impaired, even with the presence of cannabis in their system. This bill would place responsibility at these public events on designated bud tenders who, like bartenders, would be responsible for educating users and keeping an eye on their intoxication levels. Well, now let's check in with bordering state Oregon with Marianne Crisaci.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with the Oregon Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Another attempt is being made to legalize cannabis consumption lounges in Oregon. There have been multiple events in the past, and a consistent challenge is finding a way to make it work with Oregon's strong Indoor Clean Air Act. We're one of the few legacy states that does not have indoor consumption. And next, Portland is host to the world premiere of a comedy show entitled The History of Weed. This is an engaging mix of history and humor and tells the tale of the planet's most celebrated and demonized plant through the inspiring stories of the diverse people and cultures who have championed it in the face of a racist and oppressive authoritarian campaign of eradication. The History of Weed is created and performed by David Bienenstock. He is a former editor at High Times Magazine, creator of the Vice series Bong Appetit, author of the book How to Smoke Pot Properly, and host of the podcast Great Moments in Weed History. Looking forward to a fabulous show sponsored by Alibi and Happy Kitchen. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
I'm Jill Goldsberry with the New Jersey Cannabis Report for Coast to Coast Cannabis News. And here's what's happening in New Jersey. The New Jersey Spotlight Market is coming back to town on March 4th. You will be able to attend in Somerset, New Jersey. If you feel like making the trek down to the Delta Marriott hotels, that's where you will be able to network with industry leaders and investors. So if you have a product, you have a store, this is definitely the place to be if you're looking to upgrade your networking experience. And in other news in New Jersey, we reported on the Academy for Cannabis that was opening up last year. I'm sure I remember telling you all about it. Now that academy that is less than a year old, sponsored by the New Jersey Business Academy, it's a cannabis university of sorts, and there are over 1,000 students that have enrolled to be a part of this program. So if you are looking to become a cannabis business owner or learn about cultivation or anything you want to know about the industry, this is the place to learn all about it. And there are also incentives for certifications in these courses. So that's what's going on in New Jersey. I'm Jill Goldsberry with the New Jersey Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next report.
The race to become the 25th legal adult use state in the United States continues, but you can take the state of Indiana out of the running. This week, the adult use bill that was introduced a few weeks ago has been blocked by the Republican majority in that state house. In Pennsylvania, John Fetterman is the senior senator in Washington, D.C., who has always been a supporter of federal legalization. This week, the senator started a petition to support federal reform with a petition that you can sign right now if you go to the website on the screen. Okay, got it? Now let's check in with Karen Black in Arizona, a state with declining revenues that is still bullish on the plant. Here's Karen.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The Arizona Department of Health Services released its official cannabis sales figures for 2024. Total adult use and medical sales declined to just over $1.1 billion, which was a significant decrease from the $1.4 billion recorded the previous 2 years. Industry insiders cite shifts in consumer behavior and increased competition, including from the illicit market, as reasons for the decrease. Moving over to the legislature, 5 of the original 12 marijuana measures are still in play. 2 bills, one about cannabis advertising restrictions and one limiting where medical dispensaries can be located, have made it out of their original chambers and are expected to pass. 3 other bills are waiting for committee of the whole hearings. They're about medical clinical research trials, intoxicating hemp beverages, and dual licenses in rural communities. Down in Tucson, the Old Pueblo Hemp Company will be upgrading buildings in the Tucson Unified School District and the University of Arizona with its hemp insulation and building materials. The partnership is one of the largest commercial applications of hemp-related construction in the country. Meanwhile, back in the Phoenix metro area, the Best in Grass Arizona Award Show was held February 28th in conjunction with the Marijuana Industry Trade Association. The affair featured red carpet arrivals at the Corona Ranch and Rodeo Grounds in Levine Village. Also this past week was the 3rd annual Arizona Cannabis Awards Music Festival, which took place March 1st in Glendale. That's all for this week's Arizona Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Earlier in the show, we visited another cannabis social club in West Hollywood in California, a state that is starting to open up more consumption lounges every month. In Oklahoma, they have an interesting approach to social clubs. You can bring your own cannabis into an alcohol-serving bar. That's where Kimmy Cannabis reports from this week.
I am Kimmy Cannabis from Can I Talk About It with the Oklahoma Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm at the Up Down, an adult arcade in the Plaza District in Oklahoma City. This is a cannabis-friendly patio that we're on. Not only can you come here to play arcade games and consume alcohol if you're over 21, you can also consume cannabis on the upstairs balcony. I'm here with a couple customers to get their view from the patio. So, hello.
Hi.
What are your names?
I'm Ashley. I'm Rocky.
And is this your first time being at the Up Down?
No, we've been here.
You've been here many times?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And do you have your med cards, by the way?
Yes.
Because this is a medical cannabis state, just so we say this, so you do have to have your med cards to consume at any of these locations. Correct?
Correct.
Although they don't card you, but you have to be responsible, right? Yes. So have you ever had any kind of problems with consuming on a balcony with anybody?
No, never. It's very welcomed.
It's not like the alcohol exchange, right?
No, not at all.
Like no conflicts.
No.
Like
just love.
Yeah, right? Right. So do you play games here?
Yes. They have some of the best games here.
I love that we have this much these many things here to occupy us as cannabis consumers.
Yes.
And I just personally love it.
We love it here. We're always welcomed, and it's just a safe place.
Yes. Good. Well, I appreciate you guys giving, us your view from the patio.
Yes.
And thank you.
Thank you.
And I am Kimmy Cannabis. That is it for this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News Oklahoma edition. Peace, love, and all that good stuff.
That'll do it for the B block of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, but we still have one more section to go, and in that one, we will have more state reports and tell you about the American Dental Association's warning about cannabis and cavities. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this break.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the final section, or the C block, of our weekly news show. I'm Alaina Pinto. One more reminder to download the PCMTV app, available on Google Play and the App Store. Not only can you get access to our documentation of the fight to end cannabis prohibition, but you can also get the live stream every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. First up in this final section is the Virginia Report with Joe Parsons.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection and Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In a repeat of last year, another one of Virginia's cannabis bills has made it through the House and will be sent to the governor's desk. And hopefully this time it won't be another missed opportunity for justice. House Bill 2555 would create a process for sentence modifications and would allow incarcerated individuals and those under state supervision that are eligible for cannabis-related offenses to petition for relief. Of course, these offenses cannot involve firearms and must be nonviolent to qualify. Last year, the governor vetoed a similar bill that denied relief to over 1,800 men and women that are unfortunately still paying a price for laws that have since changed. He cited that the bill would undermine the legal system and the judges that felt that the sentences were necessary at the time of sentencing. While the governor's position on this issue has not changed, the support for this bill has since grown in popularity, especially since Maryland and other states have enacted similar measures. Recent polling indicates that 84% of registered voters support the release of incarcerated people serving sentences for crimes that include activity that is now legal. Another survey found that 72% of voters approved former President Biden's pardons of nonviolent cannabis offenders, including, get this, 55% of Republicans. So the question remains, will these new numbers and increased support for this measure, along with pressures of the gubernatorial election coming up in November, now might be a good time for Governor Youngkin to start winning the support of his constituents that have shown the bipartisan support for this bill and the adult retail cannabis bills to become law. Now, one way you can help is to get involved by contacting the Last Prisoner Project. Their work has been leading the way to get justice for individuals who have been negatively affected by the failed war on drugs. They can always use volunteers or donations to continue their mission to free everyone that is being jailed for simple cannabis offenses. You can contact them by going to thelastprisonerproject.org. Well, that's going to do it for this week from Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV in Charlottesville, and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
One of the most controversial executive orders that President Trump has introduced in his first 100 days in office are the cuts made to the federal workforce and the budget cuts to medical cannabis research that scientists and academics are already in the middle of. According to a report by MJ Biz Daily, there are currently 565 ongoing research studies on the long-term effects of cannabis on the brain in adults and in children. The National Institute of Health has seen their anticipated funding frozen by the president's executive order and will use the courts and legal system to loosen that freeze. According to an NIH database in 2012, the year that voters approved adult use laws in Colorado and in Washington state, researchers published around 1,200 cannabis-related studies, mostly focused on the harms of the plant medicine. By 2021, the NIH published more than 4,200 cannabis-related research projects to not only look into the harms of cannabis, but also research the overwhelming anecdotal evidence of the potential benefits of the medicine. Many of the academics who are in danger of losing their staffs and their funds did file a lawsuit to stop the freeze. After reviewing the complaint, federal judge Adam Abelson cited some freedom of speech issues in the executive orders that these cuts are, quote, arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement over billions of dollars in government spending could result in irreparable harm. He also added, quote, that is textbook viewpoint-based discrimination, unquote. This is the new reality that is facing the industry that is already a house of straws that could collapse at any moment. Even research into the hemp industry is in danger, where the U.S. Department of Agriculture already has close to 40 ongoing research projects that will be discontinued. Is there anything happening in any state that's positive? Tell us, send us a message. We want to know. There is a glimmer of hope in the report that total sales revenue in the sale of cannabis continues to grow. And now analysts are forecasting sales revenue reaching $45.35 billion this year alone. Our Maryland correspondent, Christopher Bright, sees a glimmer of hope in his state that might actually give a tax break to some operators.
Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Christopher Bright from the Enlightened Voice, bringing you this week's top cannabis headlines from Maryland. The Maryland House Ways and Means Committee has just given the green light to House Bill 619, a measure that could lighten the tax load for cannabis businesses. Approved last week, this bill expands an existing tax break exempting sales between licensed cannabis companies and registered cannabis nurseries from the state's sale and use tax. Right now, medical marijuana and some business-to-business sales dodge that tax, but come July 1st, 2025, nurseries could join the party if this passes into law. Supporters say it's a win-win. Lower costs for growers and retailers mean a stronger, more sustainable cannabis market, plus it might encourage more nurseries to register, boosting the supply of top-notch strains and spicing up competition. In Maryland's cannabis scene, it's already booming. Since recreational cannabis launched in July 2023, thanks to voters saying yes back in 2024, the state's raked in $94 million in sales just this January, pushing the all-time total to nearly $1.8 billion. This bill's now headed for the full House for a vote, and folks in the industry are watching closely. And now we introduce our content creators of the week. I would like to shine a light on the incredible team at Get to the Joint. Their podcast offers a vibrant perspective on the latest cannabis trends, innovative products, and the camaraderie of friends discussing the Maryland cannabis scene. Everyone should take a moment and get to the joint. Be sure to subscribe and let them know that the Enlightened Voice sent you. And this has been this week's Maryland Cannabis Report. I'm Christopher Bright from the Enlightened Voice, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
There is one multi-state operator that continues to grow profits as well as the cannabis sativa plant. It's Florida-based Trulieve, with over 200 dispensaries nationwide. A fourth quarter report was positive, which is still rare in the biggest companies in the industry. As you might expect, their stock rose too. And when it comes to the stock market, our Doug Miller continues to be high on Wall Street. And in this case, Trulieve. Here's Doug.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Trulieve Cannabis Corp co-founder James Purnell has been appointed president of the Florida-based marijuana MSO. Purnell, who co-founded Trulieve with CEO Kim Rivers in 2015, has more than 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur and cannabis operator. Trulieve reported fourth quarter revenue of $301 million, a year-over-year increase of 5%, according to the company's February 27th quarterly report. Their annual revenue was up 5% to $1.2 billion, and among other developments noted in Trulieve's quarter report, the company launched Onward, a non-alcoholic THC-infused beverage, opened 33 stores in 2024, increasing its retail footprint to 225 locations nationwide, and it began adult use sales at 3 Ohio locations. So let's see how the stock chart looks. It's trading around $4.25, and it's been down with the rest of the market. So I would expect it to set back up. So be sure to trade smart and lock in those profits. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, I'm Doug Miller.
If you think your state is dragging its feet to launch a medical program or an adult use market, think about the state of Alabama. In 2021, that state decriminalized the plant medicine, and 4 years later, still has not opened up one dispensary. There have been lawsuits, changes in the regulations, and over $8 million has been spent during these delays. Another example of state governments having no clue on how to launch a medical marijuana program, let alone adult use. One area of the United States that continues to embrace the revenue generated from their state's market is Nevada. This week, Tina Tasaka reports from the Arizona Cannabis Music Awards and has an update on the tribal nation's effort to operate a successful adult use business there. Here's Tina.
Good evening. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and I'm doing a little road show. I'm covering the Arizona Cannabis Music Awards Festival. This is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Nevada's illicit cannabis market, which I reported on last week, has grown to a $242 million industry, reducing the state's tax revenue from legal sales. The Cannabis Compliance Board, CCB, reported a decline in taxable cannabis sales from $965 million in 2022 to $829 million in 2024, with tax revenue for schools dropping by $32 million. Lawmakers voiced concerns about illegal sales, with Senator John Steinbeck calling it out of control. CCB officials noted illegal deliveries, high-potency hemp products, and unregulated sales in smoke shops and gas stations. While some lawmakers, like Senator Fabian Denote, proposed expanding legal sales through restaurants, spas, and events, current laws limit cannabis sales to licensed dispensaries and lounges. Some areas that can enhance efforts, events. Some lawmakers see potentials in legalizing cannabis sales at large events like the Electric Daisy Carnival, but this would require new legislation and licensing changes. This past Thursday, February 27th, the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association and the Socalgon Mole Lake Tribe hosted the Wisconsin Cannabis and Hemp Industry and Policy Summit. Exciting developments unfolded at the summit, where cannabis leaders, experts, and advocates are shaping the future of the industry. Key topics included Wisconsin's proposed medicinal cannabis bill, federal legislation, and the economic and health benefits of legalization. Tribal leaders discussed sovereignty as a tool for growth, and top-notch panel discussions were filled with industry subject matter experts to discuss cannabis and hemp innovations. With policymakers, farmers, and industry forward thinkers in one space, the summit is a movement toward a sustainable and inclusive future for Wisconsin and surrounding states. That's it for the Nevada highlights and tribal nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News. And we are still here at the Arizona Cannabis Music Festival Awards.
The state of Missouri's cannabis market continues to operate in the black, and one of the reasons for that is a much more lenient set of regulations on cannabis social clubs that are open now without any controversy or public safety issues. They also have a vibrant event calendar of one-day cannabis-friendly events. And this week, our man in Missouri, Brandon Jones, tracked down a state lobbyist. Here's his report.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. And you know, we've been watching closely the bills that have been going on here in the state of Missouri, and we're very lucky to be joined by lobbyist Ethan Thampy. Ethan, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. I'm actually on the Kansas side of the border this afternoon, was helping the good folks in Kansas out on their cannabis and hemp legislation. So,
well, I first of all want to say thank you very much for being there in the actual courtrooms, doing the groundwork, and being an advocate for us that are trying to get cannabis here for all the medical patients. And, you know, if you could just kind of tell everybody what's kind of going on here in the state of Missouri and bring us kind of up to speed for those across the country.
yeah, absolutely. So here in Missouri, we're kind of in a little bit of a war between the marijuana industry, which is kind of a regulated monopoly. We got license caps on the marijuana licenses in Missouri, so you can't enter. There's a small number of companies that control the market. And the hemp side. So I work with American Shaman here in Kansas City and some other companies around the state. And, hemp, we're seeing an explosion in the THCA flower market. We're seeing the pervasive distribution of 5 milligrams or lower dose hemp-derived THC beverages. We're seeing, a lot of presence in the market, especially in the C-store, smoke shop, even in grocery stores these days.
I
So
can say even Total Wine in Kansas picked up Cheech and Chong's drink as well, correct?
yeah, American Shaman works with Cheech and Chong. So I've been fortunate to be on the phone with them not too long ago. But yeah, so here in Missouri, we have kind of 2 or 3 different bills that would aim to regulate in various facets the hemp industry. The marijuana industry has a bill in the House and the Senate that would basically ban. They call it intoxicating hemp. So I don't like that terminology, but let's just roll with it. The marijuana industry has legislation to ban intoxicating hemp from outside of the marijuana dispensaries. We're obviously fighting that. And then there's 2 different versions of legislation that would protect the hemp industry and regulate us and give us some consumer safety and testing standards and make sure packaging isn't attractive to kids and so forth. So we're working on that. We're about 2 weeks away from the midpoint in the Missouri legislative session. So getting anything done this year is getting close to the limit of when it can, how the timeline feasibly works. So we're trying to get something good out of this legislative session. We've got once we come back from spring break on I want to say 4th week of March, we have 8 weeks left. Our legislative session goes through May I want to say 17. So that's kind of the timetable.
Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for what you do every day. And like you said, you are in Kansas right now and coming back to Missouri. There's a great thing that you're taking care of both states and making sure that patients have access. So thanks again. I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution. This is the Cannabis Coast to Coast News, and this is our Missouri Report. Have a great week. Stay medicated and educated. Thanks, Ethan.
And finally, does frequent use of adult use cannabis cause cavities? Another research study reports that the answer is yes. In an article published in January of this year, the American Dental Association used a cross-sectional survey of the research results from a self-reported survey of over 5,600 adults between the years of 2015 and 2018. That survey was done 10 years ago by the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. Their results claim that frequent recreational cannabis users have a 17% higher probability of an increase in cavities, and a 55% have a higher chance of untreated root surface issues, and 41% higher odds of having severe tooth loss. So if you use cannabis once a month, you qualify as a frequent cannabis user, and you better take care of your teeth. So don't fall asleep before you go brush. Okay, but keep in mind that original self-reported data was collected over 10 years ago and did not include medical patients. So it's just another example of this new wave of propaganda backed by the substance abuse community and the return of prohibition spin by the medical and political community. Such is the state of this industry in 2025. Not a lot of positive momentum going on in the first 2 months of the year, but supporters and lobbyists will have to become even more dedicated to the cause, especially over the next 4 years. Okay. That's this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Consume responsibly and brush your teeth. We'll see you next week.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Green Finger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
It's Debbie Facey with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.